Are you concerned about all this corruption being misgendered as conspiracies? Well, don't you worry. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation as we talk with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, and today I've got a very special and unique guest called Len Lawrence. And Len Lawrence is going to talk to us about the weaponization of the mental health. Now, Len was a airline pilot, and he is whistleblowed on the aerotoxicity, which is a condition which is now unfortunately given Len a brain damage. So Len's on the show to talk about it, and let's hear what Len's got to say. Welcome to the show, Len.
Hello.
Hiya.
Right, shall I kick off?
Yep, kick off.
Right, my name is Leonard Lawrence. I'm now almost 70. I lived in West London as a child, a place called Southall, very close to London Heathrow Airport. And in my late teens, I joined the Royal Navy. And when I left the Royal Navy in my 20s, later I trained to become a commercial pilot. I was very fortunate. I started my commercial flying once I'd qualified with British Aerospace, manufacture aircraft. And life was very good. Not working too hard, 3 days a week, and flying jets, predominantly America and around Europe.
See, that in itself is an amazing experience, isn't it?
Well, it's even more amazing, the planes we flew to America, because they were straight off the production line. They'd had about 10 hours of test flying. Then we had to hand fly them to America. So we'd go from Chester, we'd fly up to Iceland, refuel, then we'd fly across to Bangor in Maine, then down to wherever in America. But it was all hand flying at 40,000 feet. An amazing experience. And I was very fortunate that I flew with some of the best pilots in the country. They were predominantly all RAF and Royal Navy test pilots. So they were the best you were going to see. I just come up, I had no sort of military flying experience. But they were very good tutors. One of the pilots, Brian Sinnott, was the wing commander of the Queen's flight. So it was that caliber. But what I started to notice, these highly experienced pilots, they were making mistakes. And I just couldn't where they should have leveled off, say, at 30,000 feet. They were having like lapses and they were going to bust their flight level. So I prompted them. I didn't pay too much attention. Then when you land an aircraft in bad weather, you have a thing called an ILS, which is a beam from the runway, and you follow that beam down. And all the way down the beam, you give prompt calls to your colleague, and he prompts you back just to make sure you're both with us. And I was noticing some of them were missing the calls, confused, but I just didn't understand what was going on. Then one day, this is where it started, I was at Prestwick. We're flying an executive jet back to London. The captain, a man called Ian Gass from British Aerospace, highly experienced. And we had on board Sir Charles Masefield, who was the managing director of British Aerospace, and others. I was the handling pilot. And as we accelerated along the runway to take off, we got to a speed of about 160. And instantly, the entire flight deck and cabin filled with this hot, acrid smoke. And I could not even see the instruments. Our eyes were burning, our legs were burning, our hands were burning.
That sounds like mustard gas.
It was probably as bad as mustard gas, but we weren't. Anyway, we dealt with the emergency. I pulled the aircraft into the air blind, not seeing where I was or what speed I was doing. My colleague Ian Gass, he leant across the instrument panel, found a thing called a dump valve, which immediately dumped all the hot air coming from the engine to the outside, so we got visibility. So for about 15 seconds, we were totally blinded. We declared an emergency. We came back and we landed and evacuated the aircraft. The next day, the aircraft was flown unpressurized back to Hatfield near Luton, London, and it was exported to Russia, sold with all the paperwork. The reports me and my colleague, Captain Gass, wrote about the incident were handed to British Aerospace, but they never reached a Civil Aviation Authority, so there was no record of this event other than what we had written down.
Convenient.
So that's where it started. Then, as time went on, Ian Gass later died. I'm not sure the circumstances how he died, but I started to get experience of dizziness and lightheaded. And I wasn't sure, it wasn't diabetes or anything like that, because every 6 months, a commercial pilot will have an extensive medical examination, the Civil Aviation Authority. And you were sitting at the end of a runway, you put the power on, and what it was like, you were spaced out and you were going along with the aircraft and you were watching all the instruments going, but you weren't quite there. And you pulled it in the air and you could see all the dials going, but with experience, you're able to mask it, but there was something wrong. And eventually, my ex-wife noticed there was something wrong with me. The CAA had picked up something about short-term memory. And like most people with brain injury, according to an article by the Brain Injury Rehabilitation Trust, 70% of people with brain injury are divorced by their spouse.
All right, that's an interesting figure.
Yeah, who wants a cripple?
Yeah, that's such a shame.
That's being blunt. That was it. Anyway, I was still flying, and I had another Fume event. And what had happened, myself and a captain. Now, this man was very interesting. He was a flight operations inspector from the Civil Aviation Authority. So he's the regulator who checks that airlines and their crews are performing correctly. And he and I were flying an aircraft to Pula, Yugoslavia. And on the outward bound, we were going to Amsterdam. We had a Fume event and we descended, well, he was flying, we descended the aircraft to 500 feet, not aligned with the runway over the center of Amsterdam. I'm equally as at fault because I should have intervened, but I was like him, we were confused, and we suddenly snapped out of it and we climbed up and made a normal landing. Then we flew to Pula the next day, still wondering what was going on. Then on the way back over Switzerland, we were given a rerouting. So instead of just going down the M1, we had to go via Manchester, Birmingham, then back onto the M1. And we couldn't do it. We just couldn't process how to do that on the flight computer.
Really?
That was
it sounds a bit, I mean, I haven't suffered from it, but it doesn't sound too dissimilar from like when you get carbon monoxide poisoning.
Very, very similar, but it's not carbon dioxide. They know perfectly well what it is because they've done tests. And what I hadn't known, my company, British Aerospace at the time, had done who I started with, had done a secret out-of-court settlement with 2 Australian airlines about fumes on an aircraft. So they knew exactly what was going on. And go deeper, where my colleagues, all of whom have got the same problems as myself, have been researching, the United States Air Force was aware of this problem in 1955.
My goodness. And
it's been covered up. A bit like the Gulf War syndrome, like sheep dip poisoning with organophosphates. And the whole basis of this is this organophosphate. And like I say, we have them in aviation. They were invented in around World War II as a killing agent. They're absolutely brilliant, like Roundup at killing. And but they also have very other good properties, and predominantly they are in aircraft engine oil. An aircraft engine works at around about 800 degrees centigrade. Using these additives in the oil, it keeps the oil together, and so the system is
It keeps it all
all
lubricated.
together. Right. So what happened? All of a sudden, I get certified without a medical. Now we're going into psychiatry.
Okay.
And I had been to a hospital. I wasn't sure what was going on. So I thought, my mate said, go and see a psychiatrist. So I did, Signet Healthcare. And I agreed to go in for observations and tests. And I gave the psychiatrist a disc called formed by the Australian Pilots Union, all about aerotoxic. But 2-3 years later, I found that the psychiatrist had not even opened the CD.
Really?
And you have it on the email I've sent to you, so you will see it all there. And he didn't even read it. And I was an inpatient for 4 weeks. And he decided I was bipolar and a manic depressive. What is interesting, my next of kin is a man called Alistair Wilson. Alistair Wilson at the time was the clinical director of trauma, accident and emergency at the Royal London Hospital. And he was the founder of the London Air Ambulance, the surgeon that found it. Anyway, this doctor, psychiatrist, rang my next of kin, Alistair Wilson. Alistair Wilson said, no, he's not mentally ill, but that was disregarded. Then I find myself being certified. I went and saw, I left the Signet Hospital after a month, went and saw an NHS psychiatrist. He said, you're traumatized about what's been going on. And he said, you need cognitive therapy. The guy was a Nigerian. He was brilliant, but I never got that. Government legal lawyers stepped in, the official solicitor of the High Court, and Dr. Rise issued a call of protection medical certificate without a medical, when an NHS doctor said I was totally more than alert, and I find myself certified under the Mental Health Act under the official solicitor. All my rights were taken away from me and I couldn't do anything. That just on a simple piece of paper.
So people just don't realize that lawyers, barristers, solicitors, they've all sworn an oath to the Bar Guild, and the Bar Guild is there to protect them, not you or I. And this is just, it's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. I
mean, one of your previous guests, Nulu Chowdhury, there's so many. She was a pharmacist. It's happened to too many of us now.
Yeah.
So it's becoming increasingly more difficult. But anyway, I'll start now. I was certified by Dr. Rise without a medical as being bipolar, and I was placed under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act, and I was handed to the official solicitor of the High Court. A very dangerous office. The official solicitor in there, one of the solicitors there called Helen, she instructed 29 Bedford Road Chambers to act for me. And my wife's barrister from 1 King's Bench Walk had a field day. Why? I find out that my wife's barrister had also had me certified without a medical by the same doctor, Dr. Wrights. And he had handed me to Helen in the office of the official solicitor.
Is this doctor still in practice?
No, he had a brain hemorrhage. When I I got permission to serve a writ on him for clinical negligence, and he had a brain hemorrhage.
Oh, so karma does exist sometimes then.
He went back to Australia thing. But anyway, the official solicitor had been certified. My wife's barrister had been certified by the same doctor. What I've only recently found out that before this Helen joined the office of the official solicitor, Government Legal Services, she had instructed my wife's barrister in all her legal cases as a solicitor. So it was a nice little thing. both got me certified and placed under her. Then they got my wife's, and then they got Nicholas Allen, now Casey, from 29 Bedford Road, to act on my behalf. But he was good best of friends with my wife's barrister. And as he writes in his emails, "Dear Dominic, as requested, I've simply accepted all that you request."
Was this all done for financial gain, or is
Yeah,
this?
it was for my
Yeah,
wife, yeah.
yeah.
And they run up a legal bill of about £100,000. And what was interesting, as this all went on over 18 months, I'd been medicated to the extent that I'd lost capacity, basically been a zombie. If I didn't comply, I would become an inpatient. Fortunately, I was allowed to stay at home. And they dragged me till I lost capacity. Now, multiple Order Protection certificates were issued by doctors to protect me. I think around about 6. And just so people are aware what the Court of Protection is, Court of Protection is a superior court. It has far-reaching powers. It was described by Christopher Brooker, who used to be a journalist with the Daily Telegraph and Private Eye, as the most secretive court in the land, in England and Wales. And it is. If you dare to speak out about any of the cases, you will find yourself under a civil restraint order or extended civil restraint order, with the threats of imprisonment and the theft of all your properties.
Sounds like it's run by the Freemasons.
Well, believe it or not, I was then a Freemason.
Were you really? Yeah, but were you the 33rd degree Freemason?
And
That's when it all changes.
I was right at the bottom, and there is a big divide in Freemasonry, a big split, and a lot of people have resigned. And people like me in Freemasonry played a big part in trying to get me sectioned.
Yeah.
Somerset. But anyway, but fortunately, there's been a lot of Freemasons, many of who are ex-police, actually helping me, reviewing all the statements, everything was made, and bringing it, because this country has got out of hand now.
Oh,
But
it has.
it's the weaponization. So anyway, that's what the Court of Protection is. It's a superior court, and when you lack capacity, you're put under the Court of Protection, and it should safeguard both you and your assets. But in my case, the lawyers never disclosed my Court of Protection certificates to the Court of Protection, so they never knew. The official solicitor never disclosed them. In fact, what the official solicitor did, they substituted authentic Court of Protection certificates for their own in-house certificates and not disclosed any. And that is why none of the Court of Protection certificates issued in my case have court seals. So eventually, I was being held. I'd had all these adverse inferences placed on me, tens of thousands of pounds, 50,000, 100,000, the whole lot, all placed on me. Now, my home, which obviously I owned half with my wife, all rights to that was lost. And in the end, I got 82,000, but the house was valued at 720,000.
That's horrendous.
I know, but it could happen to any of you.
So
I started, eventually, the British Airline Pilots Association sent me to the United Kingdom Civil Aviation Authority, and they referred me to Wing Commander Professor Gordon Turnbull, who's a consultant psychiatrist and the advisor in psychiatry to the United Kingdom Civil Aviation Authority, his ex-RAF. He intervened and he rescued me from the government legal services.
Oh, thank God for him.
But they had evicted me on the streets and left me. Yeah, I was a patient subject to the Court of Protection.
You were treated like an animal.
Worse than that.
Yeah, worse than that, to be fair.
Yeah. So when I finally got released, it was very interesting. The treatment with Professor Turnbull continued, and I had a neuropsychologist trained in neuropsychology, Julia, under Professor Turnbull's care. Within about 3 sessions, 1-hour sessions, said, "You have a brain injury." and we went and saw Turnbull. Then I later had tests, and it was confirmed. So all that time, I had this underlying brain injury, yet they treated me as a psychiatric patient. So what I actually gained was an amazing insight how psychiatric patients are treated in this country.
Horrendously, by the sounds of it.
And particularly by lawyers, solicitors, barristers, and importantly by the government legal system. So in 2006, I started very slowly to find out what had happened to me. Now, when you've been certified, there was a ruling that it's not in your interest to see your medical records because it would cause you psychiatric distress. I have seen my medical records, and it's taken a long time. Fortunately, I got to some good judges. I got to a District Judge Brooks, who gave an order that I could search the files of the office of the official solicitor of the High Court in London. So I went to his office, all the papers were laid out. So I asked for a photocopy of each one. Which I got. Yeah, I went back with a friend. We got the files, then we started to look through them. Then we started to find the Court of Protection certificates, which hadn't been disclosed. Then District Judge Brooks then passed it to His Honour Judge Ellie at Reading County Court and Her Honour Judge Anne Campbell. They were absolutely brilliant to me. I had 2 hearings with both of them. One lasting 5 hours with His Honour Judge Ellie. No solicitors, no barristers, just as a litigant in person. And the other one was Her Honour Judge Anne Campbell spent about 18 hours. And she actually went and searched a court, Slough Court, and hadn't been told that judges hadn't dealt with my case. The circuit judge found she'd been lied to. And then she had...
So is that perjury?
For you, yes. For me, yes. For the public, yes. But not for judges.
No, because they're all protected by the Bar Guild, aren't they?
Yes. But Campbell was good. The files court tapes got sent. A lot of the tapes have gone missing, as they do in cases like mine. I went to Aylesbury, where a judge, District Judge Bonkin, and myself listened to the tape, and the solicitor, the judge, district judge, and the barristers were discussing Court of Protection and the Court of Protection certificates. I got a transcript of it. Then the tape was sent back to Slough and slipped into the files, and no one knew it had gone and thing. Then when I asked to see the tapes, they all went missing. But what the court weren't aware, I already had the transcripts.
Yeah, well done.
Well done. So we got those. Then eventually I got issued with a legal aid certificate around 2012 by the Legal Services Commission, Special Cases Exemplary Funding. Now, not many people will get one of that. And the legal aid certificate said it poses a substantial question to be answered by the Civil Court of Appeal. Now, my case was placed before His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, who is a Freemason in Berkshire. And Oliver wasn't authorised to conduct Court of Protection cases, but he went ahead and did it. And he wrote, it says here, it has to go to the Court of Protection. Then he started to diverse and question whether the Court of Protection's role was no more than just a rubber stamping process for his district judges. It wasn't. The Court of Protection manager, James Beatty, on their technical rules, he emailed me and said, Oliver's not a Court of Protection judge. But Oliver ignored that and made a judgment dismissing my appeal to set everything thing. I appealed, and the case went to the Court of Appeal. They contacted Simon Oliver Then he denies making a judgment, which he already had.
And there must be a record of that.
Yeah, I have it all now.
Yeah.
Everything. And that's why the police are so keen for me to be certified. And the judge, the Court of Appeal judge, Sally Meacher, Master Sally Meacher, the word master means they're a senior district judge, but they in the Court of Appeal, they High Court, they're given the title master. She contacted Oliver and made it very clear to him the Court of Appeal did not have jurisdiction. It had to go to a High Court family judge or Court of Protection judge. Simon Oliver was having none of that. Mrs. Justice Porfley had contacted him and told him to send it back to the Court of Appeal. And what Simon Oliver did, he typed out an email that the case in Lawrence has to go to the Court of Appeal. But he printed off a copy of that email, and in handwritten reading, he wrote the instructions: appeal dismissed, appeal dismissed. And I've got that piece of paper with his handwritten, sending instructions to the Court of Appeal that the case fails. Now, how many of your viewers have had cases sent to the Court of Appeal, not knowing that a senior judge to the two masters there have given instructions to them that their appeal fails?
Yes, horrendous. See, that's why I'm going down my own process of writing affidavits to the Attorney General. I've done the DVLA. I'm going to be doing the police, and it's taken back because they all act under jurisdiction. It's basically removing that jurisdiction, so they can't act over you. And what is the highest court that you can go to then?
Well, the Court of Protection is very different. It's but higher than the High Court. The Court of Appeal, then you've got the Supreme Court. Then obviously you can go to Europe.
I was going to say the European.
Europe, yeah. But the chances of you and I ever getting the financing or anything to get near these judges, we're just going to be struck out before our case even gets there and ignored. But I was very fortunate. 4 years ago, I went to see, it's about 4 years ago, to see the Attorney General, Sir Geoffrey Cox, when he was the Attorney General. And contrary to what a lot of people may think about Geoffrey Cox, he actually has an interest in mental health, and he has an interest in the welfare of veterans, of which I am. I can't tell you the people who took me there, but it was in Devon, and he was absolutely amazing. He wrote to the Crown Prosecution Service, and the Crown they took advice from the Home Office and the Ministry of Justice. And because Sir Geoffrey Cox at the time was Attorney General, he got a reply within a week with all the data I needed. And he's provided me with the means to set aside all judgments in my case without the need of any court.
That's fantastic.
However, before we returned this to court, my colleagues and I, and they come from all branches of life, but predominantly some of them are Freemasons, some served in the police, and others in other different roles. And we would find out how tens of thousands of people were being detained under the Mental Health Act. The safeguarding policies were not being followed, and in cases like mine, willfully disobeyed. 4 weeks before I was arrested on the 30th of March 2022 by Avon and Somerset Police, not only did we know how this was going on, we had full factual evidence of what the government legal services were doing. And that is what I'm sharing now with you, with others. And but what is now beginning to break, and what I've obviously become aware of, is this weaponization of psychiatry. If they can't get you in the justice system, because Sometimes it's transparent. Other times you'll find yourself in a courtroom where no one's allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
If they can take you down the mental health system, then you could be put under the court of protection. You could be medicated to your lost capacity, and there's nothing anyone can do.
I'm so glad I'm having this podcast with you, because it kind of just backs up everything that I've been kind of saying on my channel. But
now, I'll talk to you about what happened on the arrest. So 4 weeks before this arrest came, on the 30th of March 2022, I had available all the evidence and the documentary history of how this use of psychiatry to asset strip people or to stop people in their litigation was orchestrated and those involved. Now, I've done one thing I'd like to tell your people is the use of subject access requests. It's where if you want, say, the documents of the police or of a health authority, you do a subject access request. They're free of charge.
is that like a freedom of information?
Yeah, freedom of information. Yeah, freedom of information when you want to know something. How many police officers are there in an area? The subject access request is you're looking for data, specific data. So it's subject access request. They're free of charge. And just give a little brief summary of what you like, what you require. And by the use of them, I've managed to gain all of the foundation trusts where the mental health nurses work, their files, plus all of the police files, which I was not meant to see. And it's incredible. It's given an amazing insight, and you should do that with BVLA or someone else.
Yeah, definitely.
And when I've had obstructions, I've phoned the Information Commissioner's office. They've been extremely helpful, and where necessary, they actually intervened with the Office of Police Conduct because they were being obstructed. And I've gained all the data. So that's just something you can talk about on another program. But it's how I source the information. And obviously, there's been some very good coppers who have leaked the information. Documents have been sent to me. But anyway, go back. So the arrest happened on the 30th of March, 2022. Unknown to the police or anyone else, I was being safeguarded from 9 months earlier, during the day and at night, because it was a question not if I was going to be attacked, it was when.
Yeah.
And when the attack came in the morning, around about 9 o'clock, I saw people walking down my drive. There was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and this woman, police constable, pushed her way in and arrested me. Then followed by her colleagues. And they seized my computer. They seized my mobile phone, and I was arrested for sending malicious communication to the family of the circuit judge. It's not surprising, he's on the Judge Simon Oliver from Reading, who had dealt with my court of protection case when he went authorised.
My goodness.
Yeah, so they searched the house for about 45 minutes. Then, because I had this brain injury, I have a support worker with me, appropriate adult, and because I can lose my airway, I have to have EpiPens around me. And they were going to take me to the police station, not knowing how to administer EpiPens. So if I'd lost my airway in the car, I would have died.
Yeah.
So anyway, support worker came, and we arrive at Avon and Somerset Bridgewater Police Custody Centre about 11. We go into the custody centre, and I immediately hand to the desk sergeant, I have his full name, all his details, my brain injury identity card, and obviously we had to hand over the EpiPens and other tablets I have to have. And I requested the specialist brain injury lawyer from Headway. And I was taken down to the cells with the appropriate adult who was with me and put into a cell. And it's not very pleasant. It's not nice. It's very intimidating. But the door was left open and I was guarded by police, by the woman who, certainly by the woman who arrested me. Then after about 15 minutes, I was taken to the medical room, which is operated by, I now know, G4S. And there was a nurse and two others. I was fingerprinted, I was DNA tested, and the nurse wanted to give me a psychiatric assessment, which I refused. And I asked for a doctor. That request wasn't actioned, never got one. And I wouldn't engage with the nurse. And I was taken back to the cell, custody cell, with the appropriate adult. And we sat down. Then after about 20 minutes, two mental health nurses arrived. Well, I didn't know they were mental health nurses. They were paramedics. And their names were Bruce and Ben. I have their full names. But interesting, Bruce and Ben's names are not entered on the custody records. And the time they gained access to me and the time they left me, neither are they entered on the G4S medical records. Anyway, for 2 hours, Bruce and Ben started to goad me, provoke me, antagonize me. And they were joined by another one called Carly, a woman dressed all in black. These weren't paramedics. These were mental health nurses attached to police stations.
Just trying to instigate you to get a reaction so they could
yeah,
say,
yeah. What they did, however, they removed the appropriate adult from me. Ben did, leaving me alone with Bruce, Carly and the police to question me under police caution, which is contrary to PACE. They can't do that.
No, I was going to say that's breaking every law they've got.
Yeah. So they were questioning me. And what they were trying to do was to get me to shout or strike at them. But there's a technique taught by a friend of mine called Jimmy Johnson, who runs veterans in prison. He's been in prison now 40 years with PTSD. I use a technique called break off. I'll send you the papers on it.
Yeah, please
what
do.
It teaches you to do is to desensitize, take 2 steps back and not engage in conflict. And that is what saved me.
It's almost like a real-time meditation where you're
Yeah. But it was so important that I'd only literally just read that. They were goading me about why I'd signed the Official Secrets Act when I joined the military. They had nothing to do with that. Anyway, they eventually left. And I was then interviewed by the police for about an hour. Then I was eventually driven home. But what I hadn't known, that Bruce and Ben and others had entered my medical records without my general practitioner's knowledge and without my knowledge and consent. And I had actually signed a disclaimer that my medical records were not to be put on an electronic system, like a lot of people did. That was all been denied. These people got access to my medical records straight away. And of course, they share it to the police, most certainly. But what escalated from that, as I said to you before we came on air, today over 120 employees of this trust have entered my medical records. And they've put everything on there, that I assaulted my wife and family, that I made multiple threats of anthrax against the public. I'm delusional about aerotoxic, which I've just sent you all the details, and about to do with the call to protection. So they trashed me. But for primarily the 3, then it escalated to many others. And of course, this all came down. How I found all this out was the subject access request. So what happened in the police station? The custody sergeant or one of his officers telephoned Headway, the brain injury people, They said I needed a specialist lawyer. One wasn't available straight away. They never rang the duty solicitor's office. They contacted another solicitor who came to the station. I now know that that solicitor has an association with one of the officers who oversaw my arrest, and they're both associated with the same Freemasonry lodge.
It's horrendous. Oh, God.
Well, I won't name them at the moment. I did get an apology from this former detective inspector.
So with regards to the Freemasons, then, what level did you reach?
Oh, it's just a third degree. I'm right down
A third.
Yeah. But I did stay there for 25 years, and they did provide me with assistance when I was put onto the streets and I was homeless, and they're now helping me now. Not all of them, but as I said, there's a big divide now between former and serving. It's elitist at the top.
Well, the elitists, they all practice. It's practically Satanism that they worship.
I can't evidence that, but what I know, the instructions to attack me had come from a senior level.
Yeah.
So we found out in the end, I didn't get the solicitor backed off. He didn't want to get involved, and they got another solicitor, and he wasn't helping me. He was there. He fulfilled a role, but he wasn't asking to see the evidence, which would have. I was accused of sending emails, but the police had withheld the email addresses. And of course, I've now got those email addresses, and they're not my addresses. They're not my email accounts. Proton Mail's confirmed that, and the Hotmail, the address is not the same. And what someone had done is mirrored my email accounts, but instead of mine ending in .co.uk, they'd set up an account ending in .com.
Right. Okay.
You would have expected Avon and Somerset Police to have been able to deal with that. But Avon and Somerset Police had a lot of history on me in 2012 with His Honour Judge Oliver. A superintendent prior had been held personally responsible for the recovery of my quarter protection files, and he never recovered them. So it was all covered up. And so they were also had an interest in protecting themselves. And Superintendent Richard, the then head of professional standards, had held Superintendent Ryer personally responsible. So, of course, with this subject access, you start to get a much deeper picture. But the icing on the cake came when I did a subject access request to the Office of Police, the not so independent Office of Police Conduct. And after 6 months, they hadn't responded. So I contacted the Information Commissioner's office, and they intervened. And then I got a disclosure. And the disclosure held a detective inspector in Avon and Somerset's professional standards was investigating His Honour Judge Simon Oliver. And he was investigating one of his senior officers, what had been done to me. And he sent a report to the Office of Police Conduct, and holding Chief Superintendent Claire Arms, now with Avon and Somerset Police, as
So she's still active.
Oh yes, for the obstruction of free accounts of the obstruction of justice in my case.
Wow.
And I've got that. And what happened? The IOPC, Independent Office of Police Conduct, disclosed that to me after 6 months. Of course, it shows the whole thing, how it was all unfolding. And now the IO, as I've gone back to the Independent Office of more Police Conduct for more data, they're now threatening me with legal action if I contact them again.
So couldn't make this up, could you?
No, I'll come through people like you instead. And
oh, absolutely.
yeah. So I've got that, and all I assert I can evidence is evidence-based with data. And what Avon and Somerset Police did, they took the inspector off the case, the detective inspector, and I believe the superintendent was on my side, but she was silenced. And it then passed through a civilian officers, and they tried their best to whitewash it, didn't find anything, but not one of those people told me that Chief Superintendent Arms was under investigation. They hid it all from me. And there's just been a documentary by Channel 4, Catch a Copper. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't.
If you type it into YouTube, To Catch a Copper, it's an insight to their professional standards.
Oh, okay.
And it gives an insight by about a man called Rion. Rion was a black man. He'd been stopped in Bristol, arrested. He was taken to the police station. He was complaining his head was hurting, and he was put into a cell. And the cell was locked. After 18 minutes, he vomited. 3 hours later, they checked up on him, and he was unconscious. And what Rian had was a brain hemorrhage. And he was taken to hospital and had emergency surgery and survived. And this is featured in this documentary. And Claire Arms meets the mother. And what Claire Arms tells the mother, that, oh yes, Rian was arrested, taken to the police station. He put in a cell, he vomited, then they called an ambulance. Nothing about him being left for 3 hours.
Oh no, that they couldn't possibly mention that.
No. Then when the mother went to the headquarters to look at the video after her interview with Arms, and then she saw the truth, how he'd been complaining that his neck's hurting, his head's hurting, he's stumbling, he doesn't feel well. And it showed a completely different picture to what really happened. But there's been a previous steps in Avon and Somerset. So yes, I was nervous in there. The whole intention, the police files show, it wouldn't be in the public interest to take my case down the criminal justice route. And that's why I was attacked by mental health nurses. And it was to get me into a secure mental health unit, medicated. I would have probably had an event and they would have resuscitated me.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on.
Not surprising, but shocking.
That's what's going on. Now, if you was to be certified today, or any of your viewers under the Mental Health Act, you would expect there to be an audit trail. So the name of the doctor who issued the certificate and where it's gone. When you buy a car, there's a full audit trail. The logbook, the MOT, the insurance, all of this is known to DVLA. So they know where the car is, ARPN, and they know all the paperwork. We call the protection medical certificates when people are placed under the Mental Health Act. There is no auditable trail. No one knows.
It's just written in sand and then the wind blows it away.
Yeah. So no one knows how many people have been certified. No one knows if one particular psychiatrist is making a great number of certificates where others are not, and what judges are involved, what law firms. So if, for instance, you and your wife were in conflict, you can go and see a psychiatrist who you may know that, have your wife certified, put her under the Mental Health Act, and she's out the way. Then you can continue.
I hope you'll listen to this, Mrs.
Well, yeah, but she could do it to you. So just
that's what I'm going to write my affidavits. No, you've got no jurisdiction over me. Go away.
But the whole thing about mental health, yes, there are good psychiatrists, because when these nurses all ganged up on me, and they like a bunch of frenzied hyena, more and more of them were joining in this assault. The psychiatrist, the panel who I was due to go in front of, he was questioning, if Mr. Lawrence is so ill, why hasn't he seen a doctor in last year? So but the overwhelming evidence all these nurses were sending, be it false, would be a cause of concern. But anyway, the trust gave me access to their records, the Calcott Guardian, and then we got to read all what was written, and it's absolutely horrific.
Tell me, are you going to write a book on this?
Well, people don't read books, but they do watch programs like yours.
Oh, an audiobook would be quite interesting,
Okay, well,
100%.
but I will need help to. I'm not interested in money.
No,
What I'm
no, no. It's just about getting the message out
yeah,
and showing people just how absolutely corrupt this system that everyone puts so much trust in is.
yeah. Well, like I said, I just said at this present time, Sky News has disclosed that 20,000 psychiatric patients have been sexually abused,
Mm.
and patient to patient, nurse to patient, and this has all been kept quiet. And the Nursing and Midwifery Council, who's the regulatory body, what have they been doing, allowing this to go on? And I did go through the Nursing and Midwifery Council. They conducted an investigation in my case and found no misconduct in two of the nurses. So I I contacted the Foundation Trust, and could I have the evidence that what the Nursing and Midwifery Council viewed? And the trust said they've never asked to see your medical records. And so how did they conduct an investigation?
Exactly.
So they're not speaking to me at the moment. Um,
I don't know how these people live with themselves
oh, they do.
because people have to know about what's going on.
Well, like I say, the Sky News has now exposed it, and there's a massive, really high number of deaths occurring to psychiatric patients in Norfolk and Suffolk. There's presently 3 bodies now investigating the Nursing Midwifery Council. So the very people who should be safeguarding us and should be there are not there.
No.
But programs like yours and others, they're far more effective. And that is the only way. But people need to understand basically how the mental health. So if you get pulled into the mental health system, then you've got to make sure that the correct process is there, that the judge who's going to deal with your case is authorized to conduct those court of protection certificates. Not all high court judges can deal with court of protection patients, so it goes that high. But
So are you getting your case heard then at the European?
no,
Was it the
no,
European Human Rights Court?
no, well, it doesn't need to go there now
Oh,
because
okay.
Jeffrey Cox gave me the means to set aside all judgments in my case without the requirements for the Court of Appeal. In any event, I was held under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act 1983. A former head of the family division had made a ruling that under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act, permission to appeal is not required. So the whole process could be set aside without the need of appeal and go right back to the very beginning. And that is partly why it was so keen to get me placed back under the Mental Health Act and taken away, medicated, and disappeared.
So what is your end game then? What is the result that you want to come out of this? Do you want
Well,
obviously compensation?
I'd like to have the value of my house back,
Yeah.
but it's a learning exercise. Why should what's happened to me should happen to so many other people?
Mm.
And let's be truthful, these barristers enjoy what they're doing.
Of
So
course they
does
do.
lawyers. We are no more than cash cows. We are a revenue gathering exercise.
The
What?
bench is Latin for what was bench Latin for? Bank. So
Yeah.
when you go to the bank, the bench, it's bank. It's all money. It's all
Well, one hearing with a barrister, Dominic Brazil, who had me certified, he was one King's Bench Walk Chambers. The hearing, it was a court of protection hearing before District Judge Faulkgang at Slough County Court. The hearing lasted under 10 minutes. Alistair Wilson, the president, who was the clinical director of the Royal London Hospital Trauma Department, he was president of the European College of Trauma Surgeons. He, a consultant anaesthetist, Dr. McGee, and 2 others, one of whom was a senior Freemason, all asked to take care to become my guardian. Their applications were refused. And Faulkgang, at the end of that 10-minute application, put a £10,000 cost order on me. £10,000. So, and he wasn't a court of protection judge. So when you start to go to these court cases, can you afford to make an application? You can't.
No.
And the problem is, my barrister, who had been really good, he was threatened at the court by my vice barrister, Brazil. But more importantly, the day after the hearing, he was contacted by his Honour Judge Oliver, and the barrister walked away from my case. And when these barristers step in to help people like me, they're warned off from their peers or from judges, else their life will become difficult. They may find it hard to get insurance.
Blackballed.
Yeah, thing. Now, last year, the Bar Standards Board, having told me, having investigated these barristers, having told me that my files have been destroyed around about 2012, last year, the Bar Standards Board disclosed my files to me. They hadn't been destroyed.
Why would they say that they had then?
Because I wouldn't have the evidence available to me.
Right, okay. Yeah.
And what they did, not only did they disclose my files, they disclosed 2 other people's files.
Oh, really? So
yeah, I know.
Wow.
I have electronically in hard, but I have returned those files.
Right, okay.
But the files show the Bar Standards Board director, Dr. Vanessa Davis, the barristers were never questioned why they didn't disclose my court of protection certificates to the court. So they're all cleared.
Well, I'm really grateful that things have gone in favour for you, because what you've gone through is, well, I think that would have broke so many people. You know, that would have broken people who haven't got a brain injury, let alone somebody who has. And even like the way that you've conducted this whole entire podcast, you know, you've
what you can't see, I have a support worker writing little bits on paper, keeping me on track.
No, that's good. And thank you very much for all that you do, because yeah, that's incredible.
I've sent you the document on aerotoxic poisoning. It's a very long one, and it shows you all the corruption involved. But my primary goal now is to stop this abuse of psychiatry. And now that Sky News is involved and others, this whole safeguarding. Just one brief thing to end. A detective superintendent, who is the chair of the Police Superintendents Association, had done a lecture, and he said, police officers who look after or are assigned to look after vulnerable people should be specially licensed so that they fulfill that role. Like we have people specially licensed to take the police dog out, to drive the high-speed pursuit vehicles, we need the same to look after vulnerable people. Now, I did inquire with the College of Policing why that hasn't been actioned. And apparently it's the Home Office that is stopping it.
Really?
Really.
The Home Office, they're so evil. They really are.
But it's for people like you to take this forward with me.
Oh, absolutely. I might, if I can get round to it, because it is just time, but maybe do a little video on the information that you've sent me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. But no, well, listen, thank you so much for your time and your incredible story. I wish you all the very best moving forward, and please do keep in touch. And
yeah, I will.
And let me know how it's going.
Yeah, I will.
But I hope everyone else who's watching this has found this jaw dropping. I found it jaw dropping, and thank you for tuning in and watching us both. But for now, until next time, all the best. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.